What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another GTD episode. My name is Cameron Selby, and we are going to be diving into the Week 12 showdown slate between the Buffalo Bills and the Houston Texans. It is a 5.5-point total. Houston coming off back-to-back wins against divisional opponents, whereas Buffalo had an impressive shootout win following a dreadful loss to the Miami Dolphins. So both of these teams are kind of righted the ship a little bit, and Houston's trying to get over 500 for the first time in the season, and Buffalo is trying to keep in touch with the New England Patriots, who are running away with this division and the one seed. All that is wrapped up and correlates with Buffalo and how they approach the playoffs as we get into the late stages of November and end of the season. So we do DFS content every single week. Have been having a ton of fun doing these breakdowns, especially on the showdowns. Primetime slates have been great. I know we don't break those down only on live streams on occasion, but we always post our lines in Discord. So if you aren't in there, please get in there. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe. Let us know how you're approaching this slate. Check out our main slate breakdown that we release usually on Friday mornings. And then also next week, there's a Thanksgiving special. So instead of a showdown breakdown or video, we're going to dive into a 3-game slate, and if there's showdowns, all that, we're going to put it all together in one long video for you guys. So I'm excited to break that one down. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. But without further ado, let's jump right into this one. So as always, we're going to start off with the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, they are the favorites and they are the road team. So the murky thing is, how in the hell are we going to figure out how to play these receivers? It's a very interesting group, and it's a lot of if-then statements and figuring out you can't even fit them all, because Elijah Moore has been a guy that has received snaps, at least has been third or fourth on the team in most games this year, but he was a healthy scratch last week, and that was in addition to Keon Coleman. That was the big name Saturday night, Sunday morning, that he was going to be a late scratch, or a healthy scratch rather. And I mean, he has not done anything outside of a fourth quarter. We've said that before, where he was the main beneficiary from Buffalo's comeback victory against the Baltimore Ravens, ricochet touchdown, and then since then has not eclipsed 50 yards. He's had the occasional touchdown, but hasn't really done anything. And he definitely hasn't lived up to the status of being the first pick of the second round just a year and a half ago in the 2024 draft. So it's a whole lot of interesting things. It was disciplinary reasons for the reason behind his healthy scratch. Because it's a following week, I could totally see the narrative where, nobody plays him. He comes in, he's 5,400, the second most expensive guy. Nobody plays him, less than 10% owned. He catches a touchdown, rights the ship, because people believe in him and they want to get his mind right. But also, he could be a healthy scratch again. I don't necessarily think that the entire receiving room really stepped up to do anything with it. Khalil Shakir on this main slate this past week was pretty chalky. I think he was about 15% owned. Ended the game with less receiving yards than he started with. Had -3 yards on 3 targets, and he's been their most consistent guy. So if your most consistent guy without Dalton Kincaid, Keon Coleman, and even for a lighter term, Elijah Moore is all out, and you are having negative yards in a 44-point shootout, and you're 8,000, it's a tough sell. All these guys are very different price points, and it's just very tough. Josh Palmer was a guy that I took some flyers on as a really cheap guy. I think he was 33 on the main slate. Did okay. He was 5 targets, was a decent sample size, and on top of that, 50% of the snaps. There were 4 guys that played 50% of the snaps. Nobody played more than 55. So that is just the epitome of this receiver room. Obviously, on most games and occasions, Khalil Shakir is the most confident and comfortable one, but when he's 8,000, you got guys that are playing the same snap share, and it just comes down to if any scores touchdowns. And I don't think, even though Houston has a really strong secondary, there's not really a guy that they're trying to take out of the game or really trying to pinpoint. Gabe Davis, though, re-signed with the team. First game sample size with the team. 5th on the team in snaps. So 41% of the snaps in his first game, but caught 3 or 4 targets for 40 yards. So he at least was involved early on. 3,800 is really rich for a complete unknown sample size. Is that an outlier performance, or is it a sign of things to come? And then Tyrell Shavers was the one that caught the deep ball, had 4 for 90 and a touchdown that led the receiving room. And he's had, I guess that was his really only true successful game so far this season. Hasn't really played a ton, but last week was a season high in terms of snaps. So he made the most of it by going from tied for 4th or 5th on the team in snaps to tying for the most on the team in snaps. So if and when Keon Coleman's out, he probably has the biggest elevation in terms of workload. I don't know how comfortable it is, but at least he's 2,400, so you can feel a little bit better about it. Curtis Samuel was a DNP. He had a season high also in terms of snap share with 50% this past week, and has been okay. I mean, catching 1 to 2 passes, had 3 targets this past game. If he's now on the field, he's a DNP, and a couple of other guys are healthy scratches. I would anticipate if he's out, then Elijah Moore will be in, and he's $200 cheaper. You can put exactly what Curtis Samuel was doing, which is around 3 fantasy points without touchdowns, and then Elijah Moore, basically the same exact thing. So being $1,000, if you wanted to try to get 3 of the expensive guys up top, I totally get it and understand why you would go that route to afford those guys, and you're going to have to sprinkle some of these guys in. It's going to be similar to what we had with the Jets last week, but hopefully a little bit more confidence because Josh Allen is not Justin Fields throwing football. Going on to the tight ends, though, worth noting, Dalton Kincaid has been their leading receiver this year, and that is in spite of missing a couple games. He missed because of a hamstring injury this past week. He also missed week 6 due to an injury as well, and I would anticipate on a short week, hamstring injuries, usually it's a pretty good indicator that you're not going to play. He was a DNP for the Tuesday walkthrough, so I'm just going to say, and for this video's perspective, say that he will not be playing. Even though his price point was reasonable, I was interested, even if he did play, even whether it was a limited snap share or not. Dawson Knox, though, in those 2 game sample size without him in the fold, has inherited most of the snaps. So week 6, he had 81% of the snaps. Week 11, 77% of the snaps. Nobody else was close to him. Jackson Hawes was the only guy to get snaps other than Knox in week 6. He had about 54% and then 34% this past week. So it's been Dawson Knox. But at the same time, he caught a touchdown in week 6. Last week, he had 3 targets. He had 1 reception in both games. So just because it's been Dawson Knox, the only thing I can say is that from a narrative perspective, tight ends have been awesome on Showdown slates this year. We've been hammering the props and, touchdowns, all that stuff. I mean, we even saw Pittsburgh have 4 touchdowns to the tight end position by 3 different guys on a Showdown slate. So I wouldn't be surprised. He probably would gravitate just because of all the unknowns at receiver. He would get more ownership than a Josh Palmer, Abe Davis, even a Ty Johnson, maybe. 4,000 is not a terrible price, but it's just, I can't really say because the sample size that he has not had more than 1 reception. He just has played and been on the field a lot. So that could incorporate a couple more targets his way, but it's not like he has had a specific increase. It's not like he's had that specific increase that you can just really bank on. So, none of this is really confident. The only 2 confident ones are the obvious ones up top. James Cook, 11-4 this past week. Surprisingly inefficient, at least from a rushing perspective, only 3 yards a carry. I think that was his worst performance of the year in terms of average, and it was in a positive game script. It was a decent matchup, but he did salvage by getting a long touchdown, or he did salvage by getting a receiving touchdown and a couple of long receptions. So he's been pretty much a 20-point floor for most of the games this year, other than bad matchups or negative game scripts. So if you anticipate a road favorite playing from ahead, then that's the guy that you really want to build around, even if it is a tough matchup, because Houston's been pretty solid against running backs over the last year and a half. But if it's a negative game script, you see the Miami game, 13 for 53, and very inefficient, didn't score a touchdown. Atlanta game, they were trailing the entire game. He didn't even have a reception. That was the weirder part of that whole game, but still pretty efficient with his numbers. He just didn't score, and then they didn't really use him in the pass game. And then obviously the New England game, they've been awesome against running backs as well. But for what it's worth, Ty Johnson, he's been inheriting by far the second most snaps on the team as the RB2. Hasn't really made much in terms of the rushing production. Heck, he hasn't had more than 15 rushing yards since week 1. But he is a pass catcher. So for the last 5 games, at least 2 targets. So $3,400, moderate price. He's reasonable to get to. I will say that. In terms of the Texans, though, it's mainly Nico Collins' show. And the thing is, that's been welcoming sight. We picked him a lot in best ball at the start of the season because we thought he'd have one of the most dominant target shares of the entire NFL this season, and that was off to a rocky start. I will say that. First few games had several games where he was less than 5 targets. Dick has 3 touchdowns, but it was a frustrating kind of love-hate relationship with him. But lately, 4 straight games, at least 10 targets. Basically, 3 of them, at least with the Denver game where he had 11 targets, 7 for 75. That was about 70% of the game where he was playing with Davis Mills. And then the following game, 15 targets, season best in terms of yards, 136. And then he also had 2 targets on 2-point conversions, one of which he caught. Last week, 9 for 92 on the score. We called him out as a showdown or as a main slate play. Back-to-back weeks, he paid off both times with at least 24 fantasy points in both games. He is becoming the alpha, and it's easy to just say he might be the most confident Houston Texan to play. I will say in terms of the other receivers on this slate, there's at least a case to be made for each one of them to be in the player pool. Jalen Noel, he is 5th on the team in snaps, doesn't really do a ton other than just he's had some really solid games in recent games. I know some of these 6-7 target games were without Christian Kirk in the fold because he missed a couple of weeks due to an injury. But other than, Kirk was back in this game, caught 4 for 4, 35 yards, 7.5 at 1,600 will get it done. 2.2 is not going to kill you at this price tag. So he is definitely in the pool, even though snap share, he is definitely behind the rest. Xavier Hutchinson started out as the wide receiver too, but he's kind of been getting overlapped by Jaden Higgins. That said, though, 3 of the last 4 games, at least 5 targets, 3 catches in all those games. So $3,000 is a very modest price point for somebody that can really produce of that nature. Kirk returned in week 9. Each of the last 3 games, roughly 50% of the snaps. Did really solid with the 8-target game against Denver. And then these other 2 games were kind of rough for him, but still it's welcoming to see somebody less than $3,000 is getting at least 3 targets in each of the last 3 games. So he is definitely worth mentioning as well. And then Jaden Higgins, I mentioned, he might be the confident of the bunch and maybe a little bit overlooked at $4,600. 3 of the last 4 games, at least 7 targets, has caught 4 passes in all of those games. And he's done really well, catching a touchdown in week 10 as well. So he's really starting to kind of come into his own. 2nd on the team in snaps each of the last 2 games, and that was with Davis Mills as the full-time starter in those 2-game sample size. So all these guys in the pool, definitely reasonable price points, and it's hard to believe with Davis Mills being $9,600, even though he's been really awesome as a reliever of CJ Stroud missing due to a concussion. Each of the last 2 games, 40 passing attempts, had 30 passing attempts and basically 70% of the snaps in week 9. He just doesn't have a lot of rushing upside. So I was surprised to see $9,600 as a price point, especially in this matchup. We just came off a showdown slate where Geno Smith against the 32nd ranked team against quarterbacks beat 8,800. And then yet Davis Mills, lack of rushing upside, 96. It doesn't make a lot of sense in that regard. Going to be really tough to get to, but at the same time, that doesn't mean you can't play some of the pass catchers. Woody Marks, though, it is worth noting. He was a big dud. I fell for it last week. Came against the second opportunity to play in the Texans, and he definitely did not make the most of it compared to the last game, which he had 27.9 fantasy points and 2 touchdowns. But the biggest thing is the snap shares are there. Each of the last 2 games, he's been a lion's share of snaps, touches, all that stuff. 80% was by far season best in week 10. And then in week 11, had 66%. He had 19 touches, just 2.4 yards a touch, and didn't score a touchdown. So that was a big dud. But going against Buffalo, who's been second to worst against running backs this entire season, it is definitely worth mentioning that he is in the pool. Dalton, 3 straight games, at least 8 targets. 4 of the last 5, at least with 8 targets. But every single game he's played with Davis Mills, at least 8 targets, at least 50 yards, at least 6 receptions. That's pretty impressive. I know it does say opponent rank first against tight ends. That's a very volatile position. Not every team utilizes their tight ends like a George Kittle, Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, like tight end ones. Dalton Kincaid is not on the level of those guys, but he by far has been the clear number 2 in this offense, at least from a pass catching perspective, since Davis Mills took over. So if he's getting a steady volume like we've been seeing from him, and even going back to before that. Um, I think he's reasonable to get to. He's kind of by himself, chilling at 6,400. And then for what it's worth, I don't know if there's a single platform that's going to bring his name up, but Cade Stover, week 1 of the season, there was a lot of reports after a strong camp that he would be the tight end 1 for Houston. Week 1, 4 catches on 4 targets, out snapped Dalton Schultz, but then went down with an injury. He missed time all the way through week 10. Came back last week in week 11, only played about 20% of the snaps, didn't have a target, but he's sub $1,000. He might be one of the only plays really worth mentioning. I know Dare Ogunbowale has gotten a decent amount of snaps. He's like a 2-minute back, 3 of the last 4 games with the target. If he's $400 and he gets you roughly 2 points, that can work out too. So all these guys are worth mentioning down low. Houston, even though you wouldn't think that they would be a confident bunch, at least there's steady volume with all these guys. Where Buffalo, it's just this guy, then it's this guy, but all of them is hard to trust on a week in and week out basis. But yeah, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. We're going to go into some must plays, tournament plays, game scripts, all that fun stuff. So even though I think Houston will put up a good fight in this game, I still think that Buffalo will hang on. I'm going to say Buffalo wins 27-20. Ride the momentum following a really strong win against Tampa Bay. Josh Allen's really starting to pick it up this past game and a half. At least when they were trailing by a lot against Miami, he really started picking it up. It's really just going to come down to can Houston play from ahead? Buffalo has dropped games that they shouldn't have lost this year, so I wouldn't be shocked if Houston were to make a run for this game. But I just think that Buffalo has a little bit more. And they'll do just enough to get over. The thing is, that doesn't mean that you can't go with a Houston heavy build or a even build 3-3, just because I think there are more confident options to play on the Houston side than the Buffalo side, especially when a lot of the Buffalo confident ones are really pricey. And on top of that, might be a little chalky. So the way to get different is going to be playing the Houston guys. In terms of my must play, I'm not even going to count Josh Allen because of the fact that everybody's going to play Josh Allen. It just depends on if you're going to be playing him at captain or not. I'm going to say my must play is going to be James Cook. I know it's not a good matchup, but I'm going to go with the floor. I don't think this is a specific game where 15 points can't make him a optimal play. Maybe it won't be a millionaire maker lineup, but I think you can still cash pretty well with him. It's as safe as they come. He's going to have 20 opportunities if they play from ahead. Pass catching upside as well. He's a big play threat, and I'm just going to go ahead and lock him in. In terms of fades, I'm going to say Davis Mills. It's going to be really hard to get to him at 9,600. No rushing upside. I know he has good passing volume. If he gets to that 300-yard bonus, which he's flirted with each of the last 2 weeks, maybe that'll make me eat my words. But I think I'd rather go to a cheaper Woody Marks at 9,200. On top of that, because Nico, James Cook, and Josh Allen are all above $11,000, it's going to be really hard to squeeze another $9,000 guy into the line. So nearly impossible. Unless you're going to double punt really, really uncomfortably. So I don't think that's a slate, this is a slate that you need to do that. And so with that said, I'm just going to go ahead and put a 0 on him, and hopefully I don't have to eat my words later. Tournament plays wise, I think the fun one is going to be Jaden Higgins. I really like that he's kind of exceeding snap shares. He's starting to steadily increase in recent weeks. And with that said, steady roll, $4,600, because he's more expensive than all these cheap guys, and everybody's going to be mixing and matching Buffalo receivers, cheap Houston receivers. If he's kind of more expensive than them, more expensive than, and just below the kickers, I think he might get squeezed a little bit. And if that's the case, I want to be a little bit overweight to him. And that correlates with my prop of the night, 26.5 receiving yards. I'm going to go ahead and say the over for him. I said each of the last 2 games, at least 40 receiving yards, 7 targets in each of those games. I mean, even if you're looking at the targets, 3.5 targets, 2.5 receptions, a lot of interesting props for Jaden Higgins. I know that they're factoring in a lot of these 1 and 0 catch games, but usually late second half of the season is when these rookie receivers really start to take over. So if he's already inheriting the role of being a wide receiver 2 in terms of snaps, or 2A, whatever you want to call him, I really like the direction he's going, and I think that's a pretty reasonable line to exceed for a team that might be playing from a high throughout the entire game. But let's just jump back over. We'll build a couple lines and we'll get out of here. I'm going to start out with the Josh Allen line at captain. I do recommend, because he will be the chalkiest of the chalk at captain, to leave some salary on the table if you're going to go this route. I don't think it's pretty self-explanatory having to say that. I'm going to pair him up a little bit with Tyrell Shavers. Go down a little bit. That's $3,200 remainder. That's a lot of cheap guys. So I mentioned Curtis Samuel might not play. That leaves enough for like Elijah Moore. $5,400 left. That's enough for a Keon Coleman. I told you nobody's going to play him. I didn't even. He's worth consideration as a tournament play if you play a ton of lines, just because I could just see the narrative of him catching a touchdown in a big game after hitting his lowest point on a showdown slate. But if you don't like that, save a couple $100, put a kicker in. So that's Matt Prater, $5,200. That's pretty reasonable going about it. I still might want to get another Texan in there or leave a little bit more salary on the table. If you wanted to do that, go to my tournament play. Jaden Higgins, maybe this ain't a kicker game. You get 800 on the table. You get a triple stack essentially with Josh Allen. And then you get Nico at top, pretty confident. And then Jaden Higgins, my tournament play. Let's mix it up a little bit. Let's try to take out. It's going to be really hard to also not play Nico Collins based on how well he's been playing. And if you're going to do that, you're going to have to find some salary savers. So let's say a Cade Stover or Dara Ogunbowale catch a pass. Either one, don't really have a dog in either fight. But $4,100, that's a lot more money to play with, right? So you can also pair that with a Dawson Knox. You could do that with, let's say, Josh Palmer. I know he's limited. I would anticipate that he plays. If he does, you can go that route. If you don't like that, because they basically played similar snaps and had similar targets, go Gabe Davis. Maybe he might be lower owned because people are factoring in the unknown of that's a one-game sample size. Don't really know what to go about that, but I would anticipate, because of his strong debut and his already rapport with Josh Allen, maybe he does take out some of these Tyrell Shavers and Curtis Samuel, Josh Palmer snaps if he is making the most with his opportunities. So going that route is a fun way to go about it. But let's say you don't agree with Davis Mills being the punt, or let's say you don't agree with Davis Mills being the fade on this slate. So you've got $9,600. I don't think he's captain viable, but maybe his receiver is. So let's go Nico Collins as the upside play. Back-to-back games, at least 24 fantasy points. I'm going to say Josh Allen, you still got to put in. And I know I did say James Cook is my must play. Obviously, you can't do that, but I'm giving that look anyway just for funsies. If I'm going Davis Mills, I need a second pass catcher because he's not going to have the rushing upside. Last two guys in could be something similar to a Dawson Knox, Tyrell Shavers, or you can go down to Jalen Knoll. Another way to go about it, because you do want some shares of Dalton Schultz if you're going to build Davis Mills lines, go him. $2,400 left is not a lot to work with, but if you went down to like a Cade Stover, right, that still correlates a little bit, and then you're back in this range of fitting into Josh Palmer, Dawson Knox, Gabe Davis. And when I'm going with a Nico Collins captain or Davis Mills, I'm fading probably what will be a 65 to 70% on James Cook. You're already different in itself, so I'm not as worried about being different, having more salary on the table, because I'm doing a Houston dominant build, because it's already going to be a 4-2. Pick your favorite. Let's say Dawson Knox for the vibes of the showdown slates. You go that route as well. Let's get one more look. Let's go with James Cook. Say he's a multi-touchdown threat in this game. Once again, it's going to be hard to not be doing this. I'm going to be doing a lot of that with my builds this week. I don't know. I think I'll probably be 100% to two of those three, and then maybe do a line without one of them just to see what I can make work. But then the last guy's in. It's a lot of guys down here. Everybody is in the pool that you can see on the screen, and you can all fit in a couple of these guys. So let's say Tyrell Shavers goes back in, continues the momentum of what he was able to do, and then you pick one of these Houston guys. So let's say it's Christian Kirk this time. Go with the vet instead. You got Dawson Knox last guy in. You got Gabe Davis last guy in. Either way, they correlate. Either way, it's a 4-2 build. I think that's still fun and a fun way to go about it. But with that said, guys, that's all I got for you. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Let us know how you're going to be approaching this slate. It's a very interesting and unique way to build lines this week. So I'm excited to see what's going to do it. So get in the comments. Tell me what your vibes are for this slate. Get in the Discord, because usually an hour, 30 minutes before the lock of the line, we usually put our exposures or any specific lines that we love building and have had a decent amount of success with it. So get in that Discord, comment on our tweets, on our videos, whatever you want to do. Just interact with us. We love talking football, and we hope you guys do too. So thank you guys so much. We will see you on the next one.